it's a joy for me to see this globe and these wings. So thank you for helping sponsor that, and thank you, Kathy, for going to get that. My second unity minister was Sig Paulson. He was the one that had these wings designed, and so it's very, very touching my heart. So the Sufis are the mystical aspect of Islam. And there was a Sufi who was on a pilgrimage. He was walking along. And as he walks along, a Mujahideen comes along and hits him on the head and rides off on his horse. And the Sufi calls off to him, "May Allah fill all your needs." So there's a guy next to the Sufi, and he goes, "So did you say that to him to make him feel bad?" He goes, "No." He says, "Oh, I know, you were being sarcastic." He says, "No." He says, "Well, why did you say it?" "Well, if Allah fulfills all of his needs, he's not going to go around hitting Sufis on the head." And so we recognize that when we look at people living and look at ourselves, mostly we're forgetting who we are as spiritual beings, aren't we? We're caught up in the things and what's right and what's wrong and what they did and what they said and what we should have done and all that stuff. And we forget that who we are spiritual beings. And as we do that, we not only leave something out for ourselves, we leave something out for others as well. So I've got this wonderful little device here. Let's see if I can. There we go. Oh, other way. Okay, thank you. It's got to be one way or the other. So here's what Jesus says. He says, "You are the light of the world." Now we hear that a lot where he says, "I am the light of the world." But he says, "You are the light of the world." So just take that in for a moment to say for yourself, "I am the light of the world. I am the light of the world." And then look to the person next to you and say, "You are the light of the world," right? "You are the light of the world. You are the light of the world." Now there's a part of us that wants to believe it, but there's another part of us that goes, "Oh, not me." And so we recognize that we miss out. When I was serving at the Unity Church in Merced, California, there was a lady who would call. She didn't come to church, but she'd call every month and just sort of unload about all the things were in her life that weren't good. And I'd be on the phone, and as I'm listening to her, I sort of felt like I was wilting. And 25 minutes later, I was completely drained. And this would happen every month. I'd get a call from her. And so one day in prayer, I was praying to God, and I said, "Okay, I know her call's coming up. At that time, I know her call's going to come up." I said, "What do I do? What can I say to her?" And the answer I got in prayer was, "You can't say anything to her. Don't try to fix her. That's not your job. Your job is to see her as a spiritual being. And when she calls, just imagine that you're not only listening to her, but you're listening to my spirit within you, and that my spirit is sending energy to her through the phone." This is when we had phones that actually had cords on them, remember? And says, imagine you're just sending my energy. It's not even you, it's just my energy is going through her to the phone. I said, "All right, God, I can do that." So guess what? That afternoon, she called. And I started to get into that where, oh no, here she's going, and then I'm starting to wilt. And I go, remember, oh wait, God gave me instructions. So I said, okay, God energy flowing through the phone, flowing through the phone. That phone call was only about 5 minutes long. She felt energized at the end instead of just drained like I did, and I didn't feel drained either. I felt energized as well. And so here's the key, is that when we face those situations, those challenges, those difficulties, that if we remember that we're connected to God, and that God can work through us, we have a completely different experience than, I'm going to stand and face the world, But no, it's that Spirit of God. I'm standing in the presence of God, of light, of love, of joy, all those aspects of God. I'm standing in that presence. I'm standing as that presence and letting it work through me, letting it work for me in greater and greater ways. So my lesson today is called Living as God Energy. And my acronym is going to be CAD. So some of you know computer assisted design. I was in on the early phases of computer drafting before they had CAD. It would have been a lot easier if we'd had it back then. So, but I'm going to use different words here. I'm going to call it Christ Amplified Direction. So we're going to start with connect. This idea of connecting, that's what the first C stands for, to connect, taking time to connect, like the meditation that we had. I have found that daily meditation, daily prayer in the morning orients my consciousness, orients my whole being in a different way than if I just sort of get up and try to make things happen in life. And so we recognize we take this time to connect. And remember, Jesus said, and usually what Jesus said is, it's usually translated, the Father and I are one. But when Jesus talked about God, he used the term Abba, which can be translated as Father. It's sometimes translated as Daddy, a more familiar aspect of addressing. It can be used as the chief of the clan, can be called Abba. But I heard a man speak who grew up speaking Aramaic, and he says that Abba can be used. A mother could say to her son, Abba, my beloved, is really what it means. Or a son could say to his mother, Abba. So it's not just a male term. But what it means is beloved. So when Jesus would talk to God or about God, he would call God beloved. Beloved. So imagine that you're in prayer and your experience is not of trying to reach to a God somewhere out there, but to a presence, a beloved presence that is with you. And so it's Abba, Abba. And again, connecting, because that's what we want to experience, is that connection in our lives. And when we feel that connection, then we can live from that in a great and powerful way. Years ago, we had a chance to go to Athens. And in the book of Acts, there's a story about Paul. He's in Athens, and he's trying to explain to the Greeks about his concept of God. And what he notices, he's walking along, and this is on Mars Hill, there's all these little alcoves for each of the gods. Walking along, each god has this little alcove, and he gets to the end, and there's one that says, to the unknown God. Because the Greeks wanted to cover their bases in case there was a God they didn't know about. They didn't want to be mad at them, so they had one there. And so Paul goes, well, I'll tell you about this God. He says, in him, he used him, the male term, but we know God is more than just him. But in him we live and move and have our being. And if we could hold that in mind, that as we go through our day, we're living as that being, moving as a part of that being. Imagine you're walking down the street and you're moving in God. You're moving in God. Rather than think about all the trash that's on the ground. Yeah, I'm moving in God. I live and move and have my being in that living presence. And so think about your day, the things that you're doing. You get up, you either have coffee or go get coffee or whatever you do. You're working, you're volunteering, whatever you're doing. I live and move and have my being as a part of God in each experience, in each encounter, with each thing that you're doing. And you're standing in line at the store. And the checker's sort of bothered because the person in front was fumbling with their money, I live and move and have my being in God, and I'm a presence of love and peace right here. You don't need to say a thing. Just be that presence, knowing that you're with it in your lives. And so if we have this sense, then it's connected not just in our prayer time, because that's fairly easy, but to feel connected during the day. That takes the practice. One of the things I do, I like to make little Post-it notes. I put, God is here. I'll put it up. I'll put it on my laptop near the keyboard. God is here. Put it on the refrigerator. God is here. Put it in the bathroom mirror. God is here. Just to remind myself. I used to have it when I was at my desk at church. I'd have it on my desk. God is here. Because I'd forget. And so those reminders became a way of moving in a different way. In the traditional church, they use the word sin. And I was like Sig Paulson. I was thinking of Sig with the wings. He said SIN stands for self-inflicted nonsense. But the traditional unity, years ago when you were taking the test, traditional unity's sin was, let's see if we have it here, yeah. Forgetting our divine nature. forgetting who we really are. That's the sin. And we don't want to live in that. We want to live with that connectedness. So there's, the usual four Gospels we think of, Matthew, Mark, Luke, John, but there's the Gospel of Thomas. I don't know if you're familiar with that. Many of the sayings are similar, but some of them are different. So this is one that I like. This one says, light exists inside a person of light, and he shines on the whole world. If he does not shine, there is darkness. So in other words, we're light. But if we're not shining that light, if we're not knowing that light and shining that light, then we're missing it, right? We're missing that opportunity, and we're living in darkness. We don't have that connectedness in our life. And so instead of letting others drain ourselves, and instead of thinking that, life is out to get me, remember that we're connected. We're connected in something greater in our lives. When I first studied unity, they talked about the three aspects of being: spirit, soul, and body. And the way it was usually pictured, let's see if it got here. So they had spirit, soul, and body. So spirit was at the center. And of course, then we sort of look for, well, where is God? Somewhere inside. And I always like Eric Butterworth said that God is not in us like a raisin is in a bun. God is in us like the ocean is in a wave. It's what is a wave? It's the ocean. It's part of the ocean, expression of that. And so the soul is the center of our being, the core of our being. The spirit is. Soul is our thinking and feeling, our conscious, subconscious mind. And then the body is not just our physical body, but also our life and experiences. And so the idea was that what usually happens is our focus is out towards the body. What's happening in the world? What's the news? What did they say? What didn't they say? So when that's the case, when that's their focus, then that's what's feeding our consciousness, our mind and body. That's what's feeding our souls, the things of the world. So the opportunity that we have is to have our attention on spirit, to take that time, to tune in, to live from that. And what happens is that we'll sort of keep that focus for a while, and then our focus sort of wanders around, and we get caught up in different things. But eventually we remember, I'm coming back to God, because that's where I want to live from and in and with and as in each moment. So I was meditating on this two-dimensional image one time, and all of a sudden it began to shift and expand, and it became three-dimensional. And so what I began to see is spirit is this overriding presence, and even though it's a circle, it's not limited. It's that infinite presence that sort of is over everything. And then our consciousness, our soul, our thinking, feeling, is sort of there, and then our body and our experience is the outer world. And if you think of like a movie projector, you've got a light, so that sort of relates to spirit, and then you have a film that travels across there, and based on what's on the film is what shows up in the world, right? And so if we can think of our consciousness in that way, I was trained to pray to God to change things, right? We wanted God to change. But it's like the light in the projector. Does the light in the projector change? It just shines. It's just light. What changes are the images that come across it. And that's what shows up on the screen. There are the stories in the early time of movies, in silent movies, when they would show them out in the West. A bad guy would come up on the screen and somebody had their six gun and would shoot at the screen to shoot the bad guy, but that didn't do anything to him. He just kept going, right? And so many times we're focused on what's going on out here, trying to fix what's in the world, trying to change things. If only I had more time, if only I'd gotten that education, if only this, if only that, if only my brother-in-law wasn't so stingy, whatever it is. But again, if we change what's in our consciousness, that changes what shows up. And so a couple more parts of this. So if we focus on spirit and let that shine through us, then what's going to shine through us is just that light. That light of spirit is going to shine through our consciousness. What we usually try to do is that we try to hold a sense of love in our heart, and I'm going to be loving today. I'm going to be loving today, and bring that love to the world. But if we have a consciousness that I want to be loved, so I'm going to connect with God's love and allow that to work in and through my life and allow that to shine out and to radiate into my conscience. What a difference that makes. And so this is the importance of connection, because then it's not just us trying to fix the world, but we're a part of that presence and power, that life, that love, that joy, that peace of God. And that's what's radiating in and through us and working out in the world. So can we do that? Yeah, good. So connect. Let's see, a couple other things in this connect. Years ago, Spirit gave me a song. It says, God's mind is working in my mind. God's mind is working in my mind. And so that's one of the affirmations that I have. When I have a situation and I don't know what to do, Spirit says, good. Because usually when I have an idea, it's a limited idea. So God's mind is working on my mind. I said, all right, God, what do I need to know right now? What do I need to do right now? What challenges me most of the time with God, when I say, what do I need to know right now? The answer I get is, don't worry, it'll all work out. I want to know, I want something to do, something. But I've learned, when it says, don't worry, it'll all work out, it always does. Because again, if I try to fix it at my consciousness, I usually introduce something that's not helpful. So I'd be open, connected to God, working in a greater way. So let's look at so that was C, connect. Let's look at the A, amplify. Amplify, taking it. I went to a crystal workshop years ago. Lady was talking about crystals and was going to sell crystals at the end. And one thing that she said in the middle of the workshop really struck me. She said that a crystal, if you really understand, is just an amplifier for your consciousness. She says, but if you know that, then all you need is the idea of amplification, and you don't need a crystal. I said, I'm not going to buy a crystal then. But if you think about it, once you have that idea of amplification, you can think of, again, love. Love is present. What is my job to amplify it, to bring it something more? One of the things that struck me years ago with amplifiers, particularly because I'm a bass player too, and you have a bass player and you have what we usually call a volume control. Technically what they're called is an attenuator. What they do is they attenuate the sound, they decrease the sound. And so most of what happens in our consciousness, we're attenuating what God is. God is here, right? You know, we say that there's only one presence and one power in the universe and in my life, God the good, omnipotent. Why don't we see it? Because we've attenuated it. And so what we want to do is we want to amplify it. We want to open up our channels to see that something more can happen in and through us in our lives. And the thing that we face in the material world is the second law of thermodynamics, which says energy dissipates, right? Another way of saying it is that things fall apart. You try to hold something together, and the moment we put it into form, it's already disintegrating. Yeah, you build something out of wood, and if you don't protect the wood in some way, it's gonna start to disintegrate, isn't it? And so it's recognizing that we continually need to lift up from spirit to bring the good into our lives in greater ways. And one of the ways that we do that is with speaking the word. Speaking the word. And so I'm using the word declare today. Declare, which means to be thoroughly clear and to have direction. So think about a situation in your life right now. Maybe it's a challenge with finances. Can you have that thought of God's infinite abundance, and just see yourself amplifying that thought, infinite abundance, within yourself, within the people involved in the situation, whatever the activity is. Thinking about your health. You know, we know that life is working. It's like, because we're breathing, right? We're all here, we're breathing. So we know that life is working. So, but do we want to amplify that sense of life in our elbow, in our heart, you know, whatever aspect needs, and say, life is here, life is expanding, life is doing its perfect work here and now. See, because when we just say an affirmation, I am healthy, whole, and well, there's an objection that rises out of the subconscious mind because it goes, well, what about this and what about that? And so, but when we have the sense that we're rising out of spirit, it displaces, as you talked about in the meditation, it displaces that other energy. And so it's just, how do I amplify what it is that I'm working on? So, and again, you get to declare that because we could wait for somebody else. The prayer chapels can help us hold on to that and help us, but we've got to be the ones that are amplifying that energy, that consciousness in and through our lives in every moment. And so here is, let's look at this one here. Yeah, so shift your awareness to the livingness of spirit as you. My first union minister, John Rankin, used to do what he called a star meditation. Put your left hand up, right hand down, and just imagine that you're bringing in the energy of the universe and just filling yourself with it and sending it out. You know, you can do it, you're sitting, you can do it sitting this way, left palm up, right palm down. But just imagine that you're there. You're just part of the universe, part of God's energy, part of life, part of joy, part of love, part of abundance. And don't let it be attenuated. Just see it amplified in and through you and as you. And then go to work. And then go visit your mother-in-law, you know, and then whatever it is, you know, do that work, amplify it for yourself, and then that's the way that you'll show up as a blessing in your life. And you'll feel there's this physical tingle that happens. You know, the Quakers were given their name because it's the Society of Friends. That's their name, Society of Friends. But they're called the Quakers because they would meditate. You know, they would come to church and they would sit in silence until somebody was inspired, and then they would stand up. So you could go for like 20 minutes with nobody saying anything. But they're called the Quakers because they'd get that spiritual energy working in them, and out of that they would speak. And so take time in prayer, take time in meditation till you feel that energy coming alive. And then that's what will amplify, that's what will work in and through your lives in a greater way. So here's another section from the Gospel of Thomas. This is similar to what's in the other Gospels. For no one lights a lamp and puts it under a bushel, nor does he put it in a hidden place. Rather, he puts it in a lampstand so that everyone who comes in and goes out will see the light. Everyone who comes in. So imagine a building, ancient Israel, big room, maybe 2 or 3 families living in the same room. Somebody's got an oil lamp. Are they going to go sit in the corner and just hide that light so the other families don't get it? No. They're going to set it so that everybody gets it. And so the same thing for us is that we can do our work to bring that light to life, to bring that light to the things of our life, our work, our relationships. Bring that light in greater and greater ways. So that's the amplify part. And again, part of it, if you want to come to the workshop this afternoon, we're going to look about activating our Christ presence, our Christ power, so you can do that as well. So connect, amplify, finally we get to D, direct. Learn to direct God's blessings in your life. James Gillett Freeman, who was the author of The Prayer for Protection, I Am There, other things, used to tell a story when he was in college. His mom was involved with Unity, and he'd come back home during his college breaks, and he'd work part-time at Silent Unity. And the Fillmores would have an afternoon program. They'd like somebody to sing music or to do something. So they asked him if he could do something. He didn't sing, but he says, I memorized this poem in college. I could do that. Well, it's part of Longfellow's poem, Hiawatha. But the part that he memorized was the death of Minnehaha. It says, oh, the long and dreary winter. Oh, the cold, cruel winter. And it goes on for 180 lines. And he says, I slowly killed Minnehaha. He says, when I finished, there was this longtime Unity lady sitting in the front row, and he said, I think she just floated up out of her chair and said, we will affirm life! We will affirm life! And so this is it. We face death. We face disillusion. We face things falling apart. We face this all the time. But we get to decide what we're going to focus on, what we're going to work on, how we're going to direct this energy as a blessing in our lives. So each moment we have that choice in our life. And so again, I've got this sort of phrase that I've used before. Shift your awareness to the livingness of spirit as you. Whatever the circumstances, whatever the situation. And there will be opposing situations, things that appear to be opposing. But what I found that these situations are actually calling us to bring forth things that we haven't brought forth before. Oh, this is hard. Well, but if you face it, you say, all right, Spirit, what do I need to know right now? Spirit says, you're okay. What do I need to do right now? Sometimes it'll be wait. Sometimes say, say this, or just think this, hold this, or go do this. I was praying one time. I had this situation I was working on. I said, all right, God, what do I need to do? God said, take out the trash. It was trash day, and I hadn't done it yet, but the trash came in the afternoon, and this morning I'm meditating, God, on this problem that I want you to give me an answer to. Take out the trash. I said, okay, I give up. I'll take out the trash. So I'm taking out my trash can to the street, and as I do, here's our neighbor across the street. He's bringing his trash can out. So we end up talking. In the middle of our conversation, we're not talking about what my problem is, but he says something that sparks an awareness in me about my problem, and I go, there's the answer. And I realized later, if God would have said, go knock on your neighbor's door and talk to him, I would not have done that. But take out the trash, I would do that. So God gave me something that he knew I would do. But in the midst of doing that, there was another intersection that happened. And so to recognize that when we're willing to allow Spirit to move us, amazing things can happen in our lives. So again, from the Gospel of Thomas, this says, let's go back. If you bring it into being within you, that consciousness, then that which you have will save you. But if you do not have it within you, then that which you do not have within you will kill you. Now that's pretty powerful, isn't it? So we know this stuff. Another place says, if you know, blessed are you if you do it, right? And so we recognize that when there's something that's, quote, negative, a negative emotion. If you ever studied nonviolent communication, emotions point to needs. What we call good emotions point to needs that are met. Oh, I'm feeling good right now because my needs are met. Oh, I'm angry, I'm frustrated, whatever, because our needs aren't being met. And so what we call our negative emotions are really just a part of our consciousness saying, hey, I've got a need. Can you pay attention? And when other people show up in your lives and they're upset or concerned or frustrated or whatever, it's because their needs aren't being met. Are we going to judge them for that? Because we all have needs. If we can be present to that presence of God, which is the source of all good, we know that there's an answer for every need. And so if we know that we're connected, amplifying that in our lives, then we can direct that energy of Spirit to fill the needs that we have and the needs of those around us as well. So the more intense those situations that we face, the more the opportunity that we have to bring forth more of God in our lives. Science of mind, which is related to our unity approach, has what they call spiritual mind treatment. It's a prayer process. And I have a version of it. I'm going to put it up here. So it goes like this. Spirit is here. Sort of like there's only one presence, one power in the universe, same type of thing. The second one is I am one with God. I'm one with that Spirit, which is our second principle as well, isn't it? There's only one presence. I'm a part of that presence. God is in me. So I am one with my good. I am the good. In other words, I'm not trying to get something. I know that through God, I'm connected to anything that can ever be. I'm already one with it. I'm one with it. So I'm affirming rather than I need it, I'm going to go get it, that I'm already connected with it through God, through Spirit, through mind, through my consciousness. That's already part of me. And then when that awareness comes, well, I'm pretty happy about that, aren't I? I'm grateful. I'm grateful for that. And then with that, we say, I trust and let go into the flow, which doesn't mean that we don't do anything. It means that I'm trusting and letting go and seeing the direction that I'm getting, even if it's taking out the trash, that's what I need in the moment to follow, because out of that will come the next step. Somebody asked Charles Fillmore one time, one of our co-founders, how do you know what to do? He says, I always know the next first step. And that's all we can do anyways, isn't it? It's the next first step. So let's take a moment in prayer. I invite you to close your eyes. And let's just know that we're connected to God. Let's have that thought that in that living presence, we live and move and have our being. There is this life force, this energy, this joy, this abundance, this love, this peace that is, and it calls itself, I am. I am. And so when we say I am, we're echoing that. I am peace. not trying to get to it, not trying to make it. I am. I am love. I am joy. I am. Because God is. And in that, I amplify this. Know that this can work for me and be a blessing through me for others. And so I see it directed to others. Not as me giving them something, but me being aware that it's already present in them, already powerful in them, already making a difference in them. So with that, I say thank you, thank you, thank you, God. I am open and receptive. Guide me, show me, moment by moment. I am your instrument. I am your channel. Thank you, God, that I get to live as God energy. Thank you, God. Amen. So blessings, my friends.